The Texas sun in August burned mercilessly. At the Black Rock Ranch, the air shimmered from the heat, creating mirages above the scorched grass. Dust rose with every movement, and the pens were eerily quiet, broken only by the occasional lowing of cattle. Even the most seasoned cowboys who'd worked with animals all their lives preferred to steer clear of this place. The reason was simple. Two beings lived here that everyone feared. John Clayton, at 58, was a living legend of Texas rodeo. In his youth, his name echoed to the most prestigious arenas from Houston to Dallas. He could stay on any bull, no matter how wild. The crowd held its breath whenever John entered the arena, tall, with piercing gray eyes and an iron grip. But one moment changed everything. During the state championship, a bull named Tornado threw him so hard that he landed on the arena fence. The crack of breaking vertebrae was heard even by those in the upper stands. The injury left him with a permanent limp, and his dreams of a rodeo career turned to ash. The pain that pierced his back every morning made John harsh and unyielding. He believed that only strength and strictness could make the world obey, and he applied this rule to everyone around him. Ranch workers knew better than to argue with the boss. His word was law, and disobedience meant immediate dismissal. John ruled his land with an iron fist, allowing no weakness or sentimentality. The only light in his hardened life was his 10-year-old daughter, Sarah, a fair-haired girl with sky-blue eyes. She had inherited not only her late mother's appearance, but also her kind and empathetic heart. Maria, John's wife, had died 3 years earlier from a heart condition, and since then, the farmer had grown even more withdrawn and stern. But he adored his daughter. For her, he was willing to do anything, even show a rare moment of tenderness no one else ever saw. Sarah was the only person who could make him smile. The ranch's other true nightmare was a bull named Thunder. Black as a Texas night, the giant weighed 600 kilograms, with horns that could pierce steel. Muscles rippled under his glossy hide like steel cables, and a fire of rage burned in his small red eyes, so intense that even veteran cowboys looked away. When Thunder was in a foul mood, his roar echoed across the entire ranch, sending the other animals cowering in the corners of their pens. In 3 years, the beast had turned life on the ranch into a constant nightmare, creating an atmosphere of fear and tension. Thunder's first victim was Tom Harris, a 20-year-old worker from a nearby town. He tried to load the bull into a transport trailer for the fair. Thunder endured the ropes and shouting, but when Tom used a cattle prod, the bull exploded. He tossed the young man so high, he flew across the pen and slammed into the opposite wall. Tom spent 3 months in the hospital with multiple rib fractures and a concussion. After discharge, he flatly refused to return to ranch, even for a good salary. The next victim was Hank Morrison, an experienced cattle trainer with 30 years of work behind him. Hank believed he could handle any animal and intended to show Thunder who was boss. He entered the pen with a whip and lasso, planning to get the bull used to a lead rope. But Thunder had no intention of obeying. He cornered Hank and methodically broke his ribs with a series of powerful headbutts. Only the screams for help and the quick intervention of other workers saved the trainer from death. Hank survived but vowed never to work with dangerous large animals again. Thunder's list of victims grew at a terrifying pace. Every new worker eventually tried to prove their courage by facing the legendary bull, and every time it ended in a hospital trip or, at best, a shameful retreat. The last to suffer was Mike Stevens, the best cowboy in the county, a man who could ride any horse and handle even the wildest herd. Mike believed he could tame Thunder using old-school methods, patience and persistence. He spent hours each day in the pen, trying to get the bull used to his presence. At first, it seemed like the plan was working. Thunder ignored the cowboy, minding his own business. But it was deceptive calm. One day, while Mike was adjusting the water trough, the bull attacked without warning. Thunder pinned him in the corner and began stomping him. Mike survived by sheer luck. Other workers fired shots into the air to distract the beast. Now Mike walked with a limp and swore never to go near that demon again. After that, the workers fed Thunder by pushing hay through widened gaps in the fence. Water was refilled from a long hose, always from a safe distance. No one dared enter the bull's territory anymore. John knew thunder had become the ranch's curse, but he refused to sell him. The bull symbolized John's own unbreakable will, his pride and defiance against the world. If I couldn't break one bull, he thought, staring at the black giant, then what kind of rancher am I? That scorching August morning, as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in pink and orange hues, old Sam Johnson was doing his usual round. The 70-year-old cowboy had worked the ranch for over 20 years and knew every corner of the land. His job was to check the building for damage or signs of wild animal intrusion. In a distant shed, among old sacks of grain, rusty tools, and cobwebs, he spotted something strange. In the corner, curled up between the bags, lay a child, a boy no older than 7. He was skin and bones, with visible ribs and sunken cheeks, like a skeleton wrapped in skin. His clothes hung off him like rags, a torn t-shirt that was once white and jeans with holes in the knees. His face was covered in dirt, and his tangled dark hair stuck out in all directions. It was clear he hadn't eaten properly, bathed, or slept under a roof in a long time. Scratches and bruises marked his arms and legs, signs of a harsh, homeless life. When Sam called out, the boy jolted awake and instinctively backed in the wall of the shed. Fear filled his large, dark eyes, the look of a wild animal ready to flee. He trembled, whether from the chill of dawn or fear of the unfamiliar adult. Sam couldn't tell. The boy's gaze darted around, looking for an escape route. Sam understood that any sudden movement could scare him off, so he crouched slowly, tried to appear less threatening. Sam led the boy to the main house, where John, as usual, was sipping his morning coffee on the wide wooden porch. The farmer sat in his favorite rocking chair, reading livestock price reports in the morning paper. When he saw Sam with the ragged boy, John frowned and put the newspaper aside. His gray eyes narrowed, and his face took on that familiar look of cold sternness the workers knew all too well. Drifters and beggars often wandered onto the ranch, and John had a firm rule: no feeding, no mercy, and immediate removal from property. "Where'd you pick up this stray?" he barked, standing up from his chair. His voice was sharp and brooked no argument. The boy clung even tighter to Sam, instinctively sensing the hostility in the stranger's tone. His small hands gripped the old cowboy's sleeve like a lifeline. Sam felt the child trembling and his heart ached with pity. In his long life, he had seen many unfortunate souls, but this boy looked especially defenseless. "Speak up. Where are your parents? How did you get here?" John raised his voice, stepping forward. The child only shook his head, but didn't say a word. His lips were tightly pressed together, and his eyes filled with tears he was desperately trying to hold back. It was clear the boy was terrified and didn't trust adults. Perhaps in his short life, he had already encountered cruelty and indifference that taught him to stay silent and hide. "Get out of here now!" John barked, pointing toward the road. "I've got a daughter growing up here. This place isn't for beggars and drifters. Off my land before I call the sheriff." At that moment, the front door burst open, and Sarah rushed onto the porch, having heard her father's loud voice. The girl was dressed in a nightgown, her blonde hair tousled from sleep, and soft slippers on her feet. When she saw the frightened boy, who looked even younger than her, Sarah immediately ran to him despite her father's angry shouts. Her big heart couldn't bear the sight of a suffering child. "Dad, he's just a little boy. Look how scared he is," Sarah exclaimed, stepping between her father and the stranger. She took the boy's hand, and he didn't pull away, sensing genuine kindness in her gesture. Then Mary Johnson, the elderly cook with a kind heart and silver hair neatly tied in a bun, came out of the house. She had worked on a ranch for over 15 years and was practically family. Mary had seen much in her long life, but the sight of a hungry child always touched her maternal soul. She looked the boy over with an experienced eye, immediately recognizing how malnourished and exhausted he was. "John, at least let the child eat," she asked gently but firmly. "Can't you see how skinny he is? He probably hasn't eaten properly in days. And he looks sick too." John looked at the boy with growing irritation, but seeing his beloved daughter standing up for the stranger softened him a little. He knew Sarah had inherited her mother's kind heart and compassion for the unfortunate. Memories of his late wife briefly eased the sternness in his face. "One night," he grumbled at last. He better be gone by morning. No exceptions. He eats, sleeps, and gets out. Mary immediately led the boy to the kitchen and sat him at the big wooden table usually used by the ranch hands. She made him a bowl of hot oatmeal with milk, added honey and butter, sliced some fresh bread, and poured a glass of cold milk. The child ate in silence, but hungrily, as if afraid the food might be taken away at any moment. His thin hands trembled as he brought the spoon to his mouth. To all the questions, his name, where he came from, where his parents were, the boy just shook his head. It was clear he had been through something terrible and was afraid to speak to strangers. Maybe in his short life, he had already known betrayal or cruelty that taught him to trust no one. Sarah stayed by his side the entire day, tried to cheer him up and calm him down. She showed him her toys, told stories about the animals on the ranch, and even offered to take him swimming in the pond behind the house. That night, Mary made up a cot for the boy in a small pantry next to the kitchen. The room was tiny but warm and cozy, lined with shelves filled with jars of jam and sacks of flour. The smell of spices and home baking created a feeling of safety and comfort. The house fell asleep, and the ranch was enveloped in its usual nighttime quiet, broken only by the chirping of crickets, distant lowing of cattle, and rustling of wind in the old oak trees. But the boy didn't sleep. Something was pulling him outside, some vague memory or call he couldn't understand but couldn't ignore. Images from the past flickered in his mind. A gentle woman's voice, the smell of cookies, warm hands stroking his hair. He quietly got up from the cot and tiptoed out the back door. The Texas night was warm and starry, the sky scattered with diamond-like constellations. The air smelled of hay, dust, and distant storms. The boy wandered across the ranch grounds as if drawn by an invisible force. His bare feet stepped soundlessly on the packed earth, avoiding puddles and stones. He passed the stable, where the horses snorted softly, walked by the chicken coop and the sheep pen. Finally, his feet brought him to the far corral, where in the darkness loomed the massive figure of Thunder. The bull's powerful silhouette stood, like a black mountain, among the shadows. Thunder wasn't sleeping. The huge bull stood in the middle of the pen, slowly chewing hay, his eyes glinting red in the dark. From time to time, he snorted or shifted his weight, causing the ground to tremble under him. As the boy approached the fence, Thunder raised his massive head and stared intently at the small figure. For several seconds, they looked at each other in complete silence. "Thunder?" the boy whispered, reaching his hand toward the fence. The bull's reaction was immediate and terrifying. A familiar rage flared in Thunder's small red eyes. He pawed the ground, kicking up clouds of dust, and let out a roar so deafening that birds scattered from the nearby trees. The sound was so loud and menacing it echoed across the ranch, bouncing off the walls of buildings. Thunder lowered his head, pointing his sharp horns forward, and began to move slowly toward the fence. Each of his steps shook the earth. The roar instantly woke everyone in the house. John leapt from bed, grabbed the rifle hanging by the headboard, and ran outside without even putting on his boots. Behind him came Sam and the other ranch hands, stumbling and cursing, armed with lanterns and torches. Everyone knew, if Thunder was roaring in the middle of the night, something serious had happened. Maybe thieves or wild animals had snuck onto the property. "What's going on? Who's out there?" John shouted, waving his rifle and trying to see through the darkness. But when the lanterns lit up Thunder's pen, everyone saw a sight that froze the blood in their veins. Standing by the fence was the very same stray boy they had fed and sheltered for the night. And just a few steps away, on the other side of the fence, Thunder was slowly approaching. The bull was snorting and huffing, his nostrils flaring with rage, hooves pounding the ground. His sharp horns were aimed straight at the defenseless child. "Stop! Don't move an inch!" John bellowed, pointing his rifle at the bull. "That bull will kill you. He'll rip you to pieces." Sam grabbed his head, unable to believe what he was seeing. "The kid's gonna die. Thunder will trample him. We need to shoot, boss. Shoot now." Mary ran out of the house in her nightgown and slippers. She gasped when she saw what was happening and clutched her hands to her heart. Sarah tried to run to the boy, but John held her back with one arm, not letting go of the rifle with the other. "Don't you dare!" he hissed to his daughter. One dead body is enough. Stay here. Thunder approached the fence almost completely. Only the wooden barrier remained between him and the boy, an obstacle that, for a bull this size, was more symbolic than real. His massive nostrils flared as he sniffed the unfamiliar scent. Everyone stood frozen, waiting for the inevitable tragedy. John kept his finger on the trigger, ready to shoot the bull if he tried to break through or leap over the fence. Seconds stretched like hours. Thunder stood almost nose to nose with the fence, his hot breath forming clouds in the cool night air. The boy didn't move. He just looked the bull in the eyes. There was no fear in his gaze, only a strange sadness and understanding. And then, something incredible happened. Thunder suddenly froze in place. His aggressive stance began to shift. He stopped pawing the ground and snorting menacingly. The bull lowered his massive head, sniffed again, and the expression in his small, red eyes changed. The rage faded, replaced by surprise, then something resembling recognition. Very slowly, cautiously, Thunder stretched his massive muzzle toward the fence. The boy didn't back away. He raised a small hand and touched the bull's black, damp nose. The touch was gentle, almost weightless. Thunder stood still, then quietly snorted and nudged the child's hand with his muzzle. The boy began to stroke Thunder's face slowly, and the bull let out a sound no one on the ranch had ever heard, a soft, contented lowing, almost like the purring of a giant cat. It was a complete opposite of his usual fearsome roar. The bull closed his eyes in delight, leaning into the tender caress. "What the hell?" Sam whispered, dropping his lantern in disbelief. John lowered his rifle, his mouth wide open in astonishment. In 30 years of working with animals, throughout his rodeo and ranching career, he had never seen anything like this. It defied every law of nature and common sense. Thunder, who had maimed grown men, was now calmly offering his face to a 7-year-old child for petting. "How is this possible?" he shouted, rushing toward the pen. "What kind of witchcraft is this?" The boy turned at the shout and looked at the furious farmer with guilt in his eyes. His large, dark eyes showed apology. He knew he had broken the rules and woken everyone. Thunder, meanwhile, stood peacefully by the fence, occasionally nudging the boy's hand for more affection. "Step away from him at once," John ordered, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. What he had just witnessed shattered everything he thought he knew. The boy obediently took a few steps back. Thunder followed him with a sad gaze, letting out a low sound that resembled a farewell. The massive bull remained by the fence long after the boy had gone, staring into the distance, as if waiting for his return. No one could sleep the rest of that night. The ranch hands gathered in the kitchen, whispering and discussing the unbelievable scene they'd witnessed. Some spoke of witchcraft. Others recalled legends of people who could talk to animals. Mary brewed several pots of tea, but the cups remained untouched. Everyone was too shaken to eat or drink. John sat silently on the porch in his favorite rocking chair, trying to make sense of what had happened. He searched for a logical explanation, but all his thoughts broke against a simple fact. Thunder, who attacked everyone without exception, had not only allowed a stranger to touch him, but clearly enjoyed it. When the first rays of sunlight colored the eastern sky in pink hues, John made a decision. He had to uncover the truth about the mysterious boy, who he was, where he came from, and why Thunder had reacted to him that way. The farmer suspected there was some kind of connection between the child and the bull that he couldn't yet understand. That morning, John conducted a full interrogation. He sat the boy across from him at the heavy oak table in the living room, turned on every lamp, and stared him down. His voice was stern and uncompromising, the same tone he used when confronting rule breakers or dishonest cattle traders. "Who are you? What's your name?" he began. "How do you know our bull? Tell the truth, boy. I saw something pass between you." The boy sat silently, eyes lowered, fidgeting with the hem of his tattered shirt. He shook his head at every question, but said nothing. It was clear he was afraid to speak. Either someone had forbidden to talk about his past, or he simply didn't trust adults. "Speak up now," John barked, slamming his fist on the table. "I saw it. Thunder doesn't act like that with strangers." At that moment, Mary intervened. The elderly woman had been unable to shake the feeling all morning that the boy's face was familiar. She had been studying his features, trying to remember where she'd seen him before. Something in the shape of his eyes, the curve of his brows. It tugged at her memory. Suddenly, it hit her. Her eyes widened in shock. "Wait, John," she said slowly, walking closer to the boy. "This child looks so familiar. Let me take a closer look." Mary stood up and went to the old oak cabinet where family photos and documents were stored. She rifled through papers and albums until she found what she was looking for. A small photograph in a worn frame. It showed a young woman in her 30s with soft dark hair and kind eyes. She was holding a baby, no more than 2 years old. The picture had been taken right there, in the ranch yard, with the familiar buildings in the background. "Oh my God!" Mary exclaimed, comparing the photo to the boy's face. "It's Emma's little boy. Look, John, it's him." John took the photo with trembling hands and examined it closely. The resemblance was striking. The same dark eyes, the same shape of the mouth, even a mole on the left cheek in the exact same spot. Despite the years that had passed and the thinness that had changed the boy's face, it was unmistakably him. Emma Rodriguez had worked as a cook at the Black Rock Ranch 5 years ago. She was a quiet, hard-working woman of Mexican descent who made the best tortillas in the county and had a gift for calming even the most upset child. Emma was a single mother. The father of her son had disappeared before the boy was born, leaving her to face life's hardships alone. When she had no one to leave the child with, she sometimes brought him along to work. Back then, the boy was just a toddler, barely walking. He would play in the yard for hours while his mother cooked in the kitchen. Emma never complained, never asked for special treatment. Everyone on the ranch loved her for her kindness and amazing food. Even stern John had respected her, a rare thing for a man of his temperament. But the little boy had especially loved watching the animals. He could sit for hours by the pens, studying cows, horses, and calves. Emma said that at home, he constantly asked for animal books and drew them with colored pencils. He had a special affection for the smallest creatures, kittens, puppies, calves. He showed incredible patience and tenderness with them. Emma died 2 years ago from pneumonia, John recalled sadly. She was sick for a long time but refused to see a doctor, said she couldn't afford it. By the time we found out, it was too late. But where has the boy been all this time? Why didn't he come to us sooner? As it later turned out, after his mother's death, the boy was taken in by a distant aunt named Consuelo, who lived in a poor district of nearby Laredo. The woman was bitter at the world, lived on welfare, and counted every cent. She agreed to take the child only because social services promised a monthly allowance for his care. Consuelo immediately calculated that the money would cover the boy's food and leave a bit extra for herself. From the first day, she made it clear the boy was a burden, that every bite of bread he ate took away from her own children. She forced him to work from dawn till dusk, scrubbing floors, washing laundry, caring for younger kids. For any mistake, she beat him with a belt or locked him in a dark closet without food. The boy endured months of humiliation and abuse as long as he could. But when his aunt started talking about sending him to an orphanage or selling him as a laborer, he couldn't take it anymore. One August night, while the household slept, the 7-year-old packed his few belongings into an old pillowcase and climbed out the window. For a time, he wandered the roads, surviving on scraps from garbage bins, sleeping in abandoned barns and under bridges. The only thing that kept him going was a hazy memory of the ranch where his mother once worked, the kind people, the sense of belonging. And one day, those memories led the boy back to John's farm. "What's your name, son?" Mary asked gently, sitting down next to the boy and taking his hand. "Luke." The boy said for the first time since arriving at the ranch, his voice quiet and hoarse. He wasn't used to speaking. At his aunt's house, children weren't allowed to talk without permission. "Luke," John repeated softly, his voice slightly softened. "Luke Rodriguez. Do you remember our ranch?" The boy nodded hesitantly, studying the adults' faces, trying to figure out if they were angry with him. "And do you remember Thunder?" John continued. "He was small," Luke answered quietly. "When Mom used to bring me here, he was just a tiny calf. I helped feed him with a big bottle. Mom showed me how." Suddenly everything made sense. Thunder had recognized the scent and voice of the boy who had cared for him in his earliest days. Animals, especially intelligent ones like bulls, remember kindness for a long time, sometimes their whole lives. To Thunder, Luke wasn't a stranger. He was part of his earliest, safest memories, memories of maternal warmth and comfort. At that moment, a disheveled Sarah burst into the room. The girl had been worried about the boy all night and had waited by the door all morning for news about her father's talk with the stranger. Hearing Luke's name, she ran up to her dad and tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, can Luke stay now?" she asked hopefully. "He's not a stranger. He's one of us. He remembers Mama Emma and our ranch." John looked at his daughter, then at the frail boy, and finally toward the corral, where Thunder's silhouette stood. The bull was in the same spot where he had spoken to the child the day before, and it seemed like he was waiting for him to return. Something stirred in the heart of the hardened rancher, perhaps memories of his own childhood, or maybe a long-delayed guilt for not being able to help Emma during her terrible illness. "All right," he finally said after a long pause. "You can stay, Luke. But there are conditions. No visiting Thunder without my permission. That bull is dangerous, even if he does remember you." Luke nodded happily, and for the first time in months, a shy smile appeared on his gaunt face. Sarah clapped her hands and immediately began making plans to show her new friend all the most interesting places on the ranch. And just like that, Luke became part of the Clayton Ranch. He was given a small room under the stairs, cramped but warm, with a tiny window and a simple bed. Mary took it upon herself to restore the boy's health. She cooked him nutritious meals, made sure he got enough sleep, and gradually began teaching him how to read and write. John gave Luke age-appropriate chores, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, helping Mary in the garden. The boy did everything with surprising diligence and gratitude. After being used to grueling work at his aunt's, even simple tasks on the ranch felt light and enjoyable. Sarah was thrilled to have a little brother, because that's how she now introduced Luke to everyone. She delighted in showing him every corner of the ranch, told him family stories, and shared her childhood secrets. For the first time in her life, she had a true friend to play with and talk to about anything. But the biggest change was in Thunder's behavior. The massive bull seemed transformed overnight. He still wouldn't let strangers near him and could bare his teeth at anyone approaching without respect. But the unprovoked aggression was gone. The ranch workers noticed he had become noticeably calmer. No more slamming into the corral walls, no more growling at passers-by, no more attempts to break the fence. Luke visited Thunder every day, now with John's permission and under adult supervision. He brought the bull treats, fresh apples, carrots, sometimes sugar cubes. He would stand by the fence for long periods, quietly telling the giant animal about his day and childhood worries. Thunder would listen, his massive head lowered, and it seemed as if he understood every word. Dr. Carter, the ranch's longtime veterinarian, was stunned by the change in Thunder. This gray-haired man with kind eyes and gentle hands had seen many remarkable things in his career, but the bond between the boy and the bull defied everything he thought possible. "In 20 years of working with livestock, I've never seen anything like this," he told John as he watched Luke scratching Thunder behind the ear through the fence. "This boy has a special gift. Animals sense something in him that most people don't have." Months passed in a peaceful rhythm. Luke attended the local school with Sarah, quickly catching up on his education. Despite his rough past, he proved to be a bright student with a sharp mind and excellent memory. His teacher often praised his diligence and thirst for knowledge. After school, the kids helped with chores, and in the evenings, Luke always visited Thunder. It became a ritual. He'd tell the bull about his day, what he learned in class, his joys and small sorrows. Thunder listened intently, occasionally letting out a soft grunt or gently nudging the boy's hand. The bull became so calm and predictable that even the ranch workers stopped fearing him. Of course, they still treated him with respect and caution. He was, after all, a huge animal with sharp horns. But the atmosphere of constant fear and tension that had haunted the ranch for years finally dissipated. However, this newfound peace and family happiness were under threat from a serious issue John rarely spoke of aloud. The Black Rock Ranch was in deep financial crisis. Last year's drought had severely damaged the pastures and hayfields, forcing them to buy overpriced feed. An outbreak of an unknown illness had claimed the lives of nearly 30 head of cattle, dealing a crushing blow to the farm's income. On top of that, equipment problems piled up. The main tractor broke down, irrigation pumps needed replacement, and the roof of the main barn leaked so badly they had to constantly move the hay. The bank was aggressively demanding repayment of a loan taken 3 years ago to modernize the ranch and threatened to confiscate property if payments were missed again. John spent sleepless nights poring over bills and documents, trying to find a way out of the financial pit. He considered selling off some land, reducing the herd, even laying off workers. But all these measures offered only temporary relief and didn't solve the core problem. The ranch desperately needed serious investment to become profitable again. Then one chilly October day, as golden leaves swirled in the air, heralding the arrival of winter, a sleek black pickup truck pulled into the ranch. It had chrome trim and a leather interior. Out stepped a man in his 50s, dressed in expensive cowboy attire, handmade leather boots, designer jeans, and a hat worth more than a month's wages for a regular worker. It was Bill Hunter, the owner of the largest ranch in the state, Golden Horseshoe, a man of immense influence and wealth. His land stretched across tens of thousands of acres, and his cattle numbered in the thousands. Hunter was known for his tough business tactics and his talent for buying other people's problems for pennies, then turning them into profitable ventures. "John, old friend," he extended his hand to the farmer, though they had never truly been friends. "I heard you've got a very special bull here. They say he's a real beast. Won't let anyone near him. I want to buy him for my breeding collection." John tensed at Hunter's words. He knew the man's reputation. Hunter never bought anything without a scheme. And selling Thunder now, just when such a deep bond had formed between the bull and Luke, felt like betrayal. "Thunder's not for sale, Bill," John said firmly, folding his arms. "Don't be so quick to answer." Hunter grinned slyly. "I'm ready to pay $75,000 in cash. Right now, no red tape, no banks." It was a huge sum. With that money, John could pay off all his debts, upgrade the ranch, buy new equipment, and rebuild his livestock. It was the kind of money that could solve every financial problem and secure a bright future for Sarah and Luke. "Think about it, John," Hunter pressed. "To you, he's just one bull, special or not. But for me, it's a chance to create a unique breeding line. Besides, I've heard you're having some financial troubles." At that moment, Luke ran into the yard, having been playing hide-and-seek with Sarah behind the house. He'd heard unfamiliar voices and came to see who was visiting. When he saw the well-dressed man standing next to the farmer, Luke ran up, curiosity lighting his face. "Mr. Clayton, are you going to sell Thunder?" he asked anxiously, having caught the meaning from the adult's expressions. "Grown-ups are talking. Go inside," John said sternly, not wanting to discuss family matters in front of a stranger. Bill Hunter looked curiously at the thin boy in plain clothes. He had heard rumors about a child who could supposedly calm aggressive animals, but Luke didn't particularly impress him. "So this is the kid who tames bulls?" he asked mockingly. "Looks like a regular street brat to me. You really believe in these fairy tales, John?" "Thunder isn't a thing," Luke said softly but firmly, staring the wealthy man right in the eyes. "He's alive. He has feelings. He can be happy and sad, just like people." Hunter laughed loudly at the boy's words. "Listen, kid, a bull is money on hose, nothing more, nothing less. Animals are made to serve people and turn a profit. Everything else is sentimental nonsense. Luke, go inside. Now." John snapped, seeing the conversation taking a nasty turn. Luke obeyed, but his sadness was obvious. He understood they were talking about his best friend, and he felt helpless in the adult world of decisions and money. That night, John couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, thinking about Hunter's offer. $75,000. That money could buy years of peace and freedom from debt. He could give Sarah a great education, maybe even send her to a prestigious college. The ranch could be fully modernized and become one of the best in the area. But selling Thunder felt like admitting defeat. John had kept the bull as a symbol of his unbreakable spirit. If he couldn't handle one animal, what kind of farmer was he? Thunder was his challenge to fate. proof that he wouldn't give up no matter how hard things got. Selling the bull would be like saying his methods had failed, that he was a loser, and yet practical concerns began to outweigh emotion. John had a duty to his family, to Sarah's future. If the ranch went bankrupt, they could lose everything, their home, their land, their way of life. Then what good would Thunder be if they had no roof over their heads? In the morning, after a sleepless night and painful deliberation, John finally made a decision. He called Hunter and set a meeting for the next day. "Bill, I accept your offer," he said, trying to sound confident. "Come tomorrow for the bull. Cash only, full amount." "Excellent, John. I knew you were a reasonable man," Hunter replied cheerfully. "I'll be there in the morning with a trailer and my men. We've got a deal." The next day, Hunter arrived with a large trailer and 3 experienced handlers specializing in cattle transport. They were strong, weathered men with sun-darkened faces and hands scarred from years of work. Each carried a belt with lassos, cattle prods, and other tools to force even the most stubborn animals into submission. Luke stood by his bedroom window, watching them prepare to take away his best friend. Tears streamed down his thin cheeks, but he didn't sob. Months at his aunts had taught him to endure pain silently. He understood he was powerless in this adult world ruled by money and logic. Sarah approached her father, her face full of sadness. "Daddy, why are you selling Thunder? Luke will be really upset without him. Can't you see how hurt he is?" "This is adult stuff, honey," John replied, avoiding her eyes. "Sometimes you have to make tough decisions for the sake of the family. You'll understand when you're older." But deep down, John knew he was doing something wrong. Thunder should stay. Still, his practical instincts drowned out those doubts. The family needed this to survive. When Hunter's men tried to load Thunder into the trailer, chaos erupted. The massive bull, who had been relatively calm for months, suddenly turned into a raging beast. Seeing strangers with ropes, sticks, and electric prods, he understood they were trying to take him away from the only place he'd ever call home. Thunder let out a roar so loud the windows shook and birds flew from the trees in terror. His bellow was full of rage, fear, and despair. He charged at the nearest man with such force the handler barely managed to dive behind the fence. Thunder's sharp horns pierced the wooden board like it was made of cardboard. One of the handlers, a cocky man named Red, decided to show off and entered the pen with a lasso and a stun gun. He was sure he could handle any bull, no matter how wild. But Thunder was unlike any animal Red had ever faced. The bull didn't run or avoid the fight. He charged straight at the man with such speed and fury that Red didn't even have time to react. Thunder's horn struck the cowboy in the shoulder, tearing through his leather jacket and leaving a deep wound. The man collapsed, screaming in pain and crawling toward the pen's exit. But Thunder wasn't done. He rampaged through the enclosure, smashing everything in his path. His powerful hooves destroyed troughs and feeders. His horns gouged deep marks in the wooden walls. The bull seemed ready to tear down the whole pen rather than let them take him away. "Get away from him," Hunter shouted, watching from a safe distance. "That beast will destroy the whole trailer." Indeed, when Thunder saw the vehicle, he attacked it too. The powerful strikes of his hooves left huge dents in the trailer's metal walls. With one blow of his horn, the bull pierced the side panel, leaving a hole the size of a basketball. "This bull is a damn demon," shouted the buyer, watching his expensive equipment being destroyed. "I'm not buying a murderous beast that can't be controlled." At that critical moment, Luke couldn't take it anymore and ran out of the house despite the adult's orders. He couldn't just stand there and watch his friend suffer. He rushed to the enclosure, ignoring the shouts and warnings. Thunder, calm down," he shouted, reaching his hands out to the enraged bull. The effect was immediate and astounding. Hearing the familiar voice, Thunder froze in the middle of his destructive rampage. He turned toward the boy, and in his small red eyes, the rage faded into pain and confusion. The bull let out a pitiful sound, more a groan of a wounded creature than the roar of a predator. Easy," Luke said in a calming voice, slowly approaching the fence. "I'm here, it's all right. No one's going to hurt you." Thunder walked up to the fence and rested his massive head in the boy's outstretched hands. His heavy breathing slowly calmed, his muscles relaxed. A silent conversation took place between them, one only they understood. Luke stroked the bull's face, whispering something into his ear, and the animal listened closely to every word. Bill Hunter watched the scene with a look of horror and disgust. He had spent a fortune on transport and specialists, and now he was watching his plans fall apart before his eyes. A damaged trailer, an injured worker, and most of all, a bull that only became tame in the presence of some kid. "Without that kid, your bull is worthless," he told John, pointing at Luke. "It's obvious." The moment the boy leaves, the animal turns into an uncontrollable beast again. He looked around at the destruction in the pen, the damaged trailer, and the bloodied assistant already being bandaged by other workers. If the child doesn't come with the bull as a package deal, there's no deal at all. Hunter declared firmly, "I need an animal I can use on the ranch, not a ticking time bomb." "Luke is not for sale," John replied firmly, and for the first time in years, his voice carried unshakable resolve. "That boy lives here, and he's not going anywhere." "Then take your damn bull back." Hunter snapped, waving his arm in anger. "I don't need a killer that maims people and destroys equipment." The wealthy man called over his aides, and they began hurriedly loading the damaged gear into the trucks. The wounded Red was helped into the cab of a pickup after his wound was cleaned and an improvised bandage applied. The man was pale from blood loss and shock, but the medic said his life was not in danger. "You'll regret this decision, Clayton." Hunter shouted as he got into his truck. "When the bank takes your ranch for debt, you'll remember this day." The convoy drove off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the bitter taste of missed opportunity. John stood in the yard, watching them go, knowing he had just turned down $75,000, money that could have solved all the family's financial problems. He walked over to the pen where Luke was still calming Thunder. The boy was speaking softly to the bull, who listened attentively, occasionally responding with a low moo. The sight stirred something deep in the hardened farmer's soul, perhaps a memory of his own childhood, when he too had a beloved horse he was forced to sell because of his family's financial struggles. "I'm sorry I tried to sell you," John said to Thunder, fully aware how absurd it was to apologize to an animal. "He understands and forgives," Luke replied seriously. "Thunder knows you were trying to help the family. He's not mad at you, Mr. Clayton." As if to confirm the boy's words, the bull turned his head to John and gave a slow nod. Maybe it was a coincidence, but the farmer felt like he saw understanding and forgiveness in the animal's eyes. From that day on, John never again spoke of selling Thunder. On the contrary, he began looking for other ways to fix the family's finances. Rumors about the boy who could calm even the most aggressive animals had already spread across Texas and beyond. Farmers from neighboring counties started visiting the Black Rock ranch with their troubled animals, eager to witness Luke's incredible gift. The first client was a farmer named Bob Wilson from the next county. He brought a mare named Lightning, who had thrown off 7 riders over the past year. The horse was so wild and unpredictable that no one dared ride her anymore. One cowboy had broken his arm, another suffered concussion. Bob was ready to send the mare to slaughter, but decided to give her one last chance. Lightning was a beautiful bay with a flowing mane and fiery eyes. But the moment anyone approached with a saddle or bridle, she turned into a demon, rearing, kicking, biting, and doing everything to throw off the rider. Her behavior was so aggressive that even experienced trainers refused to work with her. Luke approached her pen without fear or fuss. He sat on the ground next to the fence and began speaking softly to the animal. Lightning watched the boy warily, ready to either attack or bolt at any moment. But something in his calm voice and relaxed posture made her pause. "Hi, Lightning," Luke said gently. "I know you're scared of people. Someone probably hurt you, and now you don't trust anyone. But I'm not like that. I understand what it's like to be afraid of grown-ups." The mare snorted and stepped back a few paces, but didn't retreat to the far corner. Her ears were perked, and her eyes studied the stranger carefully. Luke's voice carried no commands or threats, only understanding and compassion. He continued talking to her, telling her about his life, how he understood her fear and need to protect herself from those who might hurt her. He made no sudden movements, didn't try to lure her with food or force her to come closer. He simply sat there and talked, letting the animal decide whether to trust him. An hour later, Lightning cautiously approached the fence and sniffed the boy's outstretched hand. Her nostrils flared as she studied the unfamiliar scent. Slowly, the tension in her muscles eased and her breathing became steadier. 2 hours later, the mare allowed Luke to stroke her muzzle through the bars. She closed her eyes in delight as he scratched behind her ears. And another hour after that, to everyone's amazement, she was eating an apple from the boy's hand. "Now we can try entering the pen," Luke told Bob Wilson. "But slowly, no sudden movements. And make sure to talk to her. Horses like it when you talk to them." Bob couldn't believe his eyes when he not only walked into the pen, but managed to put a bridle on her. The mare stood calmly, occasionally glancing at Luke's hands as if seeking his support and approval. "This can't be real," the farmer muttered, stroking the horse's neck. "I've spent thousands on trainers and vets this past year, and no one could help her. And a 7-year-old boy did it in a few hours. Thank God someone finally reached her," he said to John. "How much do you charge for this kind of work?" "I'm ready to pay anything." And so began a new chapter for the Black Rock Ranch. John set the price at $500 for each consultation with Luke and a problematic animal. The money went toward restoring the ranch, paying off debts, and ensuring a decent life for the family. But most importantly, everyone involved gained the same understanding, that Luke truly had a gift that could help not only animals, but people too. Every weekend, farmers came to the ranch from all over Texas, and even from neighboring states. They brought all kinds of animals: aggressive bulls, wild horses, vicious dogs, stubborn pigs, and even exotic creatures like llamas and alpacas. Luke worked with each case individually, finding a way to handle even the most hopeless situations. One of the most memorable cases involved a bull named Devil, brought by a farmer named Mike Rodriguez from Austin. This black giant had already injured 4 people in his 2 years of life and was considered completely unmanageable. His owner was preparing to send him to the slaughterhouse, but after hearing about the miracles performed by the boy at Black Rock Ranch, he decided to try one last chance. Devil was even larger than Thunder and appeared twice as aggressive. As soon as he was unloaded from the reinforced trailer, the bull immediately charged at the nearest fence, trying to tear it down. His roar was so loud and threatening that even John's most experienced workers stepped back to a safe distance. Luke calmly approached the enclosure and sat down on the ground near the fence, assuming his usual pose for communicating with aggressive animals. Devil noticed the boy, turned toward him, and lowered his horns, preparing to attack. His small red eyes burned with such fury it seemed he was ready to plow through anything to reach his potential target. "Hello, Devil," Luke said quietly, making no attempt to hide or back away. "I know you're angry at the world. You're probably in a lot of pain inside, and you don't know how to deal with it." The bull snorted and stomped the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. But he didn't come closer. Something in the boy's calm voice made him hesitate between aggression and curiosity. "You think all people are bad," Luke continued. "Maybe they treated you cruelly, hit you with sticks, shocked you with tasers, yelled at you, but I'm not like them. I understand your pain." The boy took an apple from his pocket and placed it on the ground next to the fence. Devil looked at the fruit, then back at Luke. His gaze still showed wariness, but the sharp edge of aggression was beginning to fade. Luke sat there for 2 hours, quietly talking to the bull. He told Devil about his life, how he too had once feared adults and didn't trust people. Gradually, the tension began to lift. The bull stopped pawing the ground and snorting threateningly. His breathing became more even. By evening, a miracle happened. Devil approached the fence and cautiously sniffed the apple. Then he looked at Luke, and something like gratitude flickered in his eyes. Slowly, very carefully, the bull ate the fruit, never taking his eyes off the boy. "That's good," Luke smiled. "Tomorrow we'll continue our talk. For now, rest, big friend." The next day, Devil allowed Luke to approach the enclosure without any signs of aggression. A week later, the boy could pet him through the fence. And another week after that, the bull calmly allowed his owner to enter the pen, but only when Luke was nearby. Mike Rodriguez was so amazed by the result that he was at a loss for words. "This can't be real," he kept saying, shaking his head. "This bull used to attack anyone, and now he's like a lamb. Where did this boy get such a gift? He has a special gift, John explained, watching Luke with the now gentle bull. He feels what the animals need. He understands their pain and fear. News of Luke spread like wildfire. Local newspapers wrote about him. TV news crews filmed segments. Reporters came from major cities to capture on camera the boy's amazing ability to communicate with even the most aggressive animals. A journalist from Dallas wrote an article titled, "The Boy Who Talks to Animals," which was reprinted by dozens of newspapers across the country. The article described Luke's incredible abilities and included testimonies from farmers who had witnessed his work firsthand. But for Luke, the most important one was always Thunder. Every morning, before going to school, the boy would bring breakfast of bull and tell him his plans for the day. Each evening, he returned to the enclosure to share his thoughts and simply spend time with his closest friend. Thunder didn't just become calm. He became a symbol of obedience and kindness. The enormous bull would greet Luke with happy lowing and follow him around the perimeter of the pen. Sometimes it seemed like they were having a real conversation. The boy would say something, and the bull would respond with quiet sounds, as if they truly understood each other without words. Dr. Carter often came to the ranch just to observe Luke and Thunder's interactions. The experienced veterinarian tried to find a scientific explanation for what was happening, but all his theories fell apart in the face of one simple fact. The bond between the boy and the bull went far beyond normal human-animal relationships. "I've studied animal behavior for 30 years, he told colleagues at veterinary conferences, but I've never seen such a deep emotional connection between a child and a large animal. This is more than taming or training. It's real friendship between two different species." John, too, began to change under the influence of what was happening on his ranch. Watching how Luke treated animals, with patience, understanding, and love, the gruff farmer started rethinking his own methods. He stopped yelling at workers over small mistakes, became more attentive to the needs of his livestock, and even began talking to his horses like Luke did. "You know, Mary," he said one evening to the elderly cook, "this boy has taught me more than I ever imagined. I used to think strength was the only way to make the world obey. Now I see that understanding and patience can be much more powerful." But the most important change happened in John's relationship with the children. The stern farmer, who had hidden his feeling for years behind a mask of harsh discipline, gradually learned to show his love for Sarah and Luke. He hugged them more often, asked about school, even played simple games with them. One evening, as the family sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah asked her father, "Dad, are you glad you didn't sell Thunder?" John looked at his smiling children. Sarah, who had grown into a kind and empathetic young woman, and Luke, who had taught everyone around him to see the world differently. "I'm very glad, Princess," he replied, hugging his daughter. "Some things are worth far more than money." That same evening, John pulled out the adoption papers that had been sitting in his desk for weeks, filled out but unsigned. He stared at the official documents for a long time, then picked up a pen and signed his name with a steady hand. From that moment on, Luke officially became Luke Clayton, a full member of the family with all the rights of an heir. The gruff, once hardened rancher, who just a few years ago wanted to kick the homeless boy off his land, was now proudly giving him his name and his protection as a father.